Yeah.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, yo. Alright, let me screen share this. Alright, first I'll just introduce kind of like the methodology of my coaching so you understand the whole point of everything. So basically, we're working on your improvement rate. I'm gonna try not to like force feed you instructions and things like that. Like, for example, one of your problems is looting. Like, your looting has obvious problems that I could point out individually, or I could find something that's going to allow you to fix those yourself, which would be telling you to make like a goal of like how fast you should loot. So basically making you fit, like teaching you, getting you to fix your own problems basically, and helping you and like increase your improvement rate. The way we do that is mostly it's experience quality and exposure. Experience quality is basically difficulty or like overall complexity. It's kind of like you can imagine like sandpaper. You'll think like the quality of the sandpaper, how rough it is, how smooth it is, etc. And then exposure is like how much you use the sandpaper. You know, if you're trying to like make a sculpture, you want to maximize how much you can do in a day or in this case in a game. So exposure is basically how much contact you make with the game. Best way to increase that is just fighting more. It's a very straightforward way to have better exposure to the game. Level of complexity is like what level of gameplay you're playing at. So whether you're scrimming, ranking, playing pubs, and then like what rank you are, what level of the gameplay, the level of your enemy, the level of yourself. And this also goes into like watching, like when you consume information, you know, exposure or experience quality also applies to that. So the level of which you watch. So yeah, like I said, I don't really work directly on gameplay. I think that's kind of less efficient. That's like I want 90% basically to be improvement rate, and then the 10% I can fill in gaps and tell you directly to do things that are kind of niche. They'll be kind of like a rare thing. But of course, like if you preferred that, I think it's less efficient. But if you prefer it, like it has its place. If somebody can't handle this style of coaching, this style of coaching is very difficult because um like basically the result is your gameplay gets broadened and it becomes very challenging. But like you said in your form, you're willing to put in the work, so I think this is good for you. It's like kind of a no-brainer. I think it's pretty uncommon that anyone that this would be appropriate for anyone, the alternative option. So does that all make sense to you for now?
Basically, I mean, I'm not sure why VOD is better as far as like, I'm not really sure why VOD is better, but if it is more efficient in whatever way it is, then I'd rather do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see basically. Like what I get out of your VODs. It's speculative at the beginning when I first take notes, and now this is when we really get into it. We clarify things that I took notes on and, you know, expand on that. So I don't know, you might be surprised at how much I'm able to pull from VODs, but maybe not. So let's just start with these questions. Why do you play Apex?
So, oh, that's a weird question. Like because it depends on kind of how you look at the question. Um,
So why did you
I
start playing
guess
Apex? And then you can think, why do you play it right now?
Okay, well, I started playing Apex originally because originally I was playing COD. I got tired of COD because I was playing COD all my life,
Mhm.
and I was playing GTA. But it was like I played GTA in like a weird way because I had like a clan and we had like a bunch of like crazy stuff. Like we were really organized and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But GTA got really toxic and I was looking for something new. So my friends was talking about Apex Legends. And I'm like, Apex Legends, like what? A battle royale? What is this? Fortnite? I don't want to play this. They'd be like, bro, just try it, just try it. So I'm like, okay. I got on, and it was new, but the fact that it was new made it so like super exciting. So I started playing it, but then like they didn't get it fast, and this was like season 2. They didn't get it fast, so they kind of like they were getting annoyed and they were complaining and things like that, and they just kind of stopped playing, and I stopped playing with them. But then I picked it up like the last, so we played like a few days of it, and then we kind of stopped. And then like the last 2 weeks of season 2, I picked it up and I started like just playing it, not grinding it, but just playing it, and it was just fun. Crypto came in, and I was like, because of how I kind of look at things, even though I don't have like because I don't have the level of understanding of like pros, but I kind of look at things and I kind of like try to analyze it. So I was looking at, I was like, how am I gonna fit into this game? And I couldn't find any legend, and then crypto came out like shortly after, and I'm like, this is it. And I've just been playing it ever since. But right now, I guess my main focus is well mainly just trying to like be the best I can be as a player. But I guess my goal in the game is to compete at the compete to be very consistent and like top competitive in the top competitive scene whenever I get to that point.
All right.
So I guess my goal is
Can you expand
uh,
on why you want to be good?
I'm just competitive. I love the game,
Cool.
and
Okay.
I feel like the only I can't really I guess play casually, and I guess the only way what's fun to me is I guess being in an environment that it's both like it can be demoralizing in sometimes, but I feel like it's just best overall for me. It's like when I'm in an environment and I have a bunch of players that are like better than me, and
Mhm.
then it pushes me. I'm like, I gotta get to that point. I
Okay.
gotta get to that point. And then I started looking at like pros and stuff, and yeah,
All right. Sounds good. No red flags so far in that. All right. I think you answered a little bit of this, but yeah, what do you know about yourself that's gonna like influence the way you play, and you're like your overall experience, not directly how you play, but
what I know about myself, like my personality.
yeah.
Um, of course I'm passionate about the game, but I guess something that can influence it is like I struggle with confidence, and I feel like that shows a lot in my game. I feel like confidence and I guess I could be very like hard on myself. So between that and confidence,
Okay. Yeah, I saw that. um,
really.
yeah. So okay, yeah. What percent of playing versus watching do you do, and who do you
Um,
watch?
I would say I watch when I watch like after I play. I watch after I play. I watch a little bit before I play, and sometimes when I take a break or like not doing anything, I'll like when I'm eating or
Okay.
whatever.
Sounds like you
I
watch like a
watch.
decent amount. Do you know like a ratio, like 50-50, 40-60 sort of thing? Like,
I would say I would say 60-40. Like I play 60% and
yeah,
I watch 40.
that's good. Okay. Random thing I want to point out. This is like the one-off thing where I'm just gonna tell you things straight up. Like I'm not gonna look too deep into it, but like using in-game comms is questionable. It's not very good. Um,
It is the only reason why we did it is because like I guess like when I played this, Brax, the guy Brax wasn't even, well, technically I'm not on the team.
Subject.
Like I'm not on that team.
Yeah.
But they asked me to play in a tournament with them. And it was an Xbox player, so we weren't able to use
Uh.
PlayStation.
Okay. All right. That
And the
makes
other
sense.
guy can't use Discord.
All right. All right. I'm just gonna skim through things and then go to discussion notes. I'll just point out things that we're gonna kind of preview. Oh, and one thing I'll point out is your mic is way quiet. Like I had to always adjust that. So if there's future sessions, just make sure you turn up your mic.
He wants the.
Okay.
You know, they're fighting. I think we should.
Alright, I guess I timestamped that wrong. But basically you said who's gonna be IGL, and that's something you obviously want to have established before you go into the game, but
I tried to, but like no one would like I tried to, like I would ask him before, but he was like, let's just focus on whatever.
yeah,
But
okay.
I felt like that was really important because it's like if you have an IGL of like you have set roles and everyone knows what to do and there's no like clashing and like hesitation.
Yeah, you can establish trust. If there's no IGL, then there's a lot more questions, right? A lot more like, yeah. Yeah, so
Should just go to a spot.
right here you say we should just go to a spot, but you're kind of approaching the game like an edge team, like rotation speed wise. So if you're gonna play zone focused, you really want to get that early rotation in. And right here, like normally if you're a positioning team, you're gonna be leaving around like 1:45. But right here, a minute has passed since that like kind of standard time of leaving, and just barely introducing the idea of rotating. So
we
that
should have left a lot earlier.
Don't worry about it too much for now. I'm just kind of like, this is something I'm gonna talk about later. But yeah, this is like a main point. So you kind of point out you want to rotate, but you're playing like an edge team, and at the same time there's like 3P opportunity that you guys aren't taking. So you're kind of torn in between these two play styles, and you're not doing anything. So we don't need to look too into that right now, but we'll just continue. I don't know where this timestamp is.
Let's explore this way. Let's go this way.
Actually,
No, just
Might
a
be
second.
something good this way.
I think we should rotate straight to staging. I didn't.
Okay. So when you overcome like your rotation, so basically what you can do if you're IGL is you can just lead your team and they'll just have to trust you. What you're doing right here in this moment is you're kind of explaining yourself as if there's not trust established. And
I think
that's,
that comes from me solo queuing a lot.
yeah, it's a really big problem in competitive. Like it makes sense that you have that problem, but it's something we're gonna be looking at and trying to work on. Like the whole IGL approach is very different than how it's seen in these VODs.
Staging through the.
Because it's like you're basically making an argument, and yeah, the only reason what I speculate is the reason is you're trying to sell the idea, kind of, as if maybe it's potentially a bad idea and you want to try to get validation or some form of security, or like convince others or yourself that it's a good idea. Whereas in reality, you're never going to know if it's a good idea until you see the result of the rotate. So you should be comfortable just making the rotation, whatever you feel, and then if it's bad, it's bad, and that's how you learn. But over speculating is like it feels good, but it really has no weight. So this raises concern because it kind of appears as if you're scared of like making a mistake, and you want to get some sort of comfort in your calls.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, basically looking for comfort in your calls. And I'm pretty sure I explained that anyways, but yeah, so earlier you said you made a decision, and you're clearly acting as the IGL, nobody else is. And it's completely necessary to make people listen to you. If nobody else is doing that job, somebody has to do it. And yeah, you make a decision to rotate, and then you're here for another minute, just chilling. Like,
It wasn't being that it was game chat and I don't have like an Elgato, so I can't capture it. Like it wasn't her, but it's like me and Grape had a lot of like I guess clashing with like I'll try to make a decision
mm,
and he tried to like counteract it.
yeah. So that like, if
Like
you're
the reason why I asked is because like before he said he'd be IGL, but he wasn't like vocal or saying anything.
mm,
That's why I
okay.
asked him like who wanted to be IGL. I wanted to hear like I didn't want to assume it because like, I very well could, but I didn't want to assume it and then make him feel like, oh, he's being, like, excuse my language, but he's being a dickhead.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, but I know that he doesn't talk much. And I feel like if you're an IGL, you need to be vocal. Like, so they need to know, like, okay, if you want to do this, then you need to say that you want to do this. But he wasn't, like, talking. So that was one of the reasons. I guess, too, I didn't want to come off as, like, being bashful. Even though I know
Yeah.
something needed to be done.
Yeah, so that in itself is like the core of the problem, right? Like you weren't, like, the problem got exacerbated because you were scared of being abrasive, right? But like there's nothing wrong with being abrasive. It's not like personal. It's not a personal issue. It's like gameplay. And so if people take it personally, that's entirely up to them. It's not anything that you did wrong. So a bit of like unnecessary tiptoeing. I don't know how big of an issue that is. I mean, I kind of feel like writing it down, but it might not be the most relevant thing. Like, kind of that whole idea.
I mean, it was a few things. Like, I guess being that I didn't really know much because I'm like obviously new to comp, but being that I didn't know much about like rotations or like
Mm-hmm.
fights and stuff. But if it was a fight, I feel like we could have took. I don't know if it was in this gameplay or not, but it was something that we could have took. But he'd be like, "No, we should just hold this for now," and then I just not do it, even though I know we could have completely like walked up, wiped that, and take that spot and be good for like next time.
Okay. I don't know how to explain this, but yeah, basically, like, the first person to make a call should just be listened to, like 99% of the time. It's kind of different with different teams, but generally you have to have a really good reason for discussion to happen. Because, you know, anytime somebody counteracts a decision, whether it's a good or bad decision, like, pretty much it doesn't matter by the time the discussion has started. It's too late. So yeah, that's a problem. I'm not sure how to write it down.
Alright, so let's go straight to harvester. We take harvester straight to a field
Let's
type.
explore this way.
But are you guys cool with that rotation?
Yeah, so this is another thing. You're kind of looking for like clarification. Like, that is just not necessary.
Alright, so let's go straight to harvester. We take harvester.
Like, I think my impression when I watched this, I was thinking like a good reason for you to be looking for feedback from your teammates on your decisions is to, you know, get that comfort in your call, like I said earlier, and try to avoid mistakes.
That's exactly what it was. Like
Yeah,
the whole like pinging thing.
yeah. So
It was really me because I wasn't saying it. It was really me just well, I don't know if I was saying it, but it was really me just saying like, is this a good rotation?
mhm,
Like like if I do this, what I like. Because being that like I was making calls and things, I didn't want to put my team in a bad position to like essentially like throw the game. But like you said, you kind of don't know unless you do it. But I was trying to,
yeah,
I guess, stop it. I was trying to stop anything bad happening before it happened instead of
mhm,
trying to like learn from it.
yeah, yeah. So in reality, you really have no control. It's like something you just have to get comfortable with. Um, but yeah, I feel like it really comes down to like avoiding mistakes and not really seeing the value of mistakes.
They took it.
Explore this way.
And you know, there's like whether you're making your team go into a bad position, like there's value in that. Even if you were the one that made your team like make the decision that made everyone die, like that adds more value than somebody not making a decision at all, because then you at least have something to learn from. Like if you do something confidently, you're gonna learn. If you don't do anything, you're not gonna learn, you know? If you just kind of
I didn't look at it like that. Just like I just kind of see it like, oh, this is a bad decision. It didn't work. I guess I didn't look at it like that.
yeah, so this is gonna be like a probably the most fundamental part of comp is like confidence. And like one of the ways you gain confidence is by being comfortable with making mistakes, and one of the ways you do that is by understanding the value of mistakes and how they're literally like the whole point of playing when it comes to learning. Like if you don't make mistakes, it means you're stagnating, because it would mean you're just playing to your comfort and you'd never get better that way. You do the same thing forever.
30 blue. You know, that's that.
So this is another example. I mean, okay, I know you can't hear it because I'm screen capturing. I guess I could I guess I can't, but I do quote it. I don't quote it
That's the
actually.
team that just went. They just redeployed. Yeah. Take my 2 times.
Yeah, so basically what you're doing, I'll explain it since you can't hear it, but you're like explaining the situation with the implication that you want to go behind this team and do like a 4P basically. And like you basically want to put this team in a bad position, and you see it as like a good opportunity, but you're just giving the reasons why before even like making a direct comp. So it seems like you really avoid making direct comps. And so that's another example of this problem that we're seeing. Like it's the same problem almost every moment.
Do you want to third that?
And then yeah, you ask a question, like you've already been interested in this for like 20 seconds, and then you know, still passive, like nothing's gonna happen out of these passive comms. And yeah, I feel like the whole reason for the whole passive, I mean, avoiding any sort of direct call / comm is just lack of confidence, like you said, and it's just because you think it's bad to make a mistake. So I don't know. We'll be talking a lot about that.
Wait.
So this is kind of a new problem that we don't see as much, but it is a really big skill to build that I'll point out.
We should have just waited.
So especially in Apex, like Apex is a super fast-paced game, and it matters in pretty much no matter what you do, like the skill of moving forward. But basically, what happens here is like you're talking about what happened 5 seconds ago. Like we should have just waited. That serves you nothing. Like it's purely negative. Because like if you do want to talk about this, there's nothing stopping you from talking about it after the game. So yeah, you gain literally nothing from like reflecting inside the game, like within the game. You just got to do it outside the game, and this can really spiral out of control. So it's something you kind of want to keep track of because it's like an emotional thing. You know, if something bad happens, you kind of dwell on it, and that's gonna like anchor you into a certain moment, and it's gonna make you very rigid. So doesn't seem like that's the biggest problem you have. That's
Yo, there's a team.
so here, this fight, there's a lot of problems I can point out with this fight, but I will just say like clearly, you just need to practice fighting, and so I'll talk about how you're gonna get better at fighting during the discussion. But
Okay.
but yeah, so this is that example.
Oh, my pants not right now.
Actually, I'll do it right now because before we do the second VOD. So, fear of making a bad call. This is like the most clear problem that we see, which is just you're scared of making a mistake. Like, it can literally be reworded as these are examples of you being scared of messing up. And yeah, you're over explaining. It's very clear that you're looking for some sort of comfort. So yeah, fear of learning, basically. Tell me about how you feel about mistakes.
Um, I definitely feel like they could be learned from, but at the same time, I guess when I have different people's lives
Mm-hmm.
like on the line, then it's not just oh I can just learn from it because I have other people who or if I make this mistake, and that definitely contributes to me like kind of stuttering or trying to over explain
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just me. Like if it's me, I can go fall or do whatever because you know I'll try to learn something from it. But if I feel like I have a team, if I have two other players with their placement and everything else, I feel like by me making that mistake or by me going through the process of trying to learn it, I feel like it's like setting them back or it's like making my teammates suffer for my own learning. That's kind of how I look at it. No, that is how I look at it.
Okay. So how does it positively affect them? If I'm going to imply that it positively affects them,
I don't know
can you brainstorm something like something random?
how that could positively affect them by making a mistake.
Yeah.
Um, but of course, if they see it that way, we could be like, okay, why did this happen? Or like we did this, and at the very least, like for instance, the fight with the people on the bridge,
Like
the fight with the people on the bridge. Sorry, my mom
like
walked in my room.
Wait.
this
With the
moment.
no, it was way back when we were by Harvester, like right before Harvester. There's a Gibby team who was shooting at the bridge, and I think a game before, either in the quals before or another scrum, I had a similar situation.
Skip rope center.
I had a similar situation, and
They just did.
I
We made.
stopped
I
and I
think we
fought
walked.
them when the ring was coming in, just like that, and it costed the game. So I tried to do it differently because I learned from that mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
basically,
I guess, mhm. I guess from like learning from the mistake. I mean, I guess from like taking the mistake, you can try to see, okay, why did that happen,
mhm.
and how can I do it differently the next time.
Yeah, so
But like I don't know if they're gonna see it like that though. Like I don't want to just like I may see it like that, or at least I may try to see it like that. But I don't want them to be like, oh, he's just kind of like throwing because of whatever. Like even if I didn't know, and that too impacts my decision making.
mhm. Yeah, so I mean, what there's really no alternative, right? Like this is definitely something that yeah, people can tilt from and people can get really fucking mad about this shit. But there's no alternative, right? Somebody has to make calls, and in the end of the day, if you're the IGL, you're the one who's making the calls. Like you're the one playing that part of the game. They're not to worry about that, and that's a luxury for them, you know. So they have to appreciate that you're doing this thing for them. That if they were to do it, they would do it worse or the same, or like it would they just have the same problem. You know what I mean? So it's like this lack of understanding that your teammates have that you're catering to, but you know the fact of the matter is like you're gonna have to learn how to deal with people who are getting tilted from their own ignorance, right? Like that's their problem. It's not your problem. So you kind of talk about like you're making them suffer, you're setting them back, but then the truth is like they're the ones making themselves suffer. Like this is a reality. Like you can't get mad when your IGL makes a bad call because
You're not making the call.
that's how the game is played. That's how it works. Like that is gonna happen. And if you get mad at something that is guaranteed to happen, there's no point. You're doing it to yourself. So they're causing the suffering. Like they're doing the damage to themselves. It's not actually you. So that's like a shift in mentality that we can kind of work on. I mean, that could be a goal, like a primary goal.
Definitely.
Basically not catering. Because I mean, I can see that like that could be a big reason why you're over explaining things. Like you're really like the way you explained how you see mistakes is you understand the value of them. Like obviously you learn from mistakes. Most people know that. It's just usually when they have this problem, there's a pressure that is overriding that, and it's bigger. Like the pressure has become bigger than the value that they see mistakes. So they end up either torn or they end up passive. And the way you become proactive and aggressive and kind of confident and free is you really understand the value of mistakes. Like that is like mistakes are the gold of competitive gaming. Like this is what you're mining for. Like when you play comp, if like I'll use this analogy all the time. If you're a surfer, whether you want to get good at surfing or you want to enjoy it, it's the same process. You need the probability for failure to be high. Right? You don't want to surf on small waves. It's boring. You know what's going to happen. It's like there's no thrill. Same thing in gaming. Like mistakes create the wave. It's sort of like a really simple way you can think about this is like they're good. They are the fabric of what makes this a fun experience. And so they're your best friend, really. Mistakes, they're the most important thing. And so if we can like rework how you think about mistakes and the value that you see in them, it will just like overshadow any social pressure. It will make it a lot less. It will basically it will just overwhelm it. And then on top of that, yeah, we can work on the social pressure aspect as well to make that smaller by what I talked about earlier with, you know, people just, they're going to be ignorant and they're going to cause themselves suffering. But we can lower, like, you know, maybe there's a little bit of guilt in there before you embed that into your mindset. But if we work on that, then at least you don't have to feel guilty. Like you can understand, yeah, it kind of sucks that my teammates get tilted, but they're doing it to themselves because of their lack of understanding. So yeah, we can lower your guilt basically in this specific scenario with you as a player. We can lower your guilt or like blame. I don't know. I guess guilt is probably the best word. I don't know how you think about that. You can clarify, but we can
I
lower.
think it is a goat. I think it's. I feel like I don't know. It's kind of like I feel like if like in that situation where well basically in my gameplay I feel like with my decisions I guess I kind of avoid being bashed by my teammates a lot
Mm-hmm.
and like of course I can see it as like I can see it as okay it's just they're ignorant and I do think of that sometimes but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time being that I don't have it 100% down it kind of like makes me feel after a while like maybe I am like the reason why they're doing this and that. And of course, I know mistakes you can learn from them, and that's how I've got to this point by myself because
Yeah.
I play a lot of solo and I'm constantly like analyzing. But at the same time, like seeing my teammates getting frustrated from the decisions that I made, even though it's their, I guess I'm not really differentiating that. Okay, this is their ignorance because I'm seeing it as at the end of the day, I'm making these decisions and they're getting tilted and we're dying because I'm making these decisions. And I know it's not the right way to look at it, but it's like how I see it right now.
Yeah, it's your fundamental understanding at the moment, even though you logically can figure it out.
I think that's definitely a huge thing and it affects I guess my mentality and how I look at things. It can like hugely huge and it does hugely impact my gameplay as you see right there. I become really hesitant and like
Mm-hmm.
insecure and things of that nature.
Yeah.
My calls.
So yeah, so like I said, we have two things we can work on, and like it's not always guaranteed that like you're gonna be able to work on both of them. But worst case scenario, you're gonna at least be able to work on one of them, and it's gonna get better. And yeah, most most often you're able to work on both. But like I would say the most important thing is not always how you're going to figure it out, but kind of getting the green light to feel justified in your actions. Like it's not going to be as easy as like a mentality shift and then you're able to make these decisions easier. It'll be more so like you understand your goal is to work on this problem and you understand that, you know, one of the best ways to get better at this is to approach your problem. So your problem is social pressure and fear of making a mistake. So the best way you can actively fix that, going over this mentality stuff is, you know, it's gonna help shift your fundamental understanding a little bit. But what it's really gonna do is it's gonna give you a green light to work on this goal. It's gonna give meaning to like really pushing yourself to making these decisions, and you know you're gonna feel all these negative emotions, but you know the way you're actually gonna change it is by it's like you have to be like brave to your emotions, sort of thing. Like, and so if you don't have the green light, it kind of feels pointless. But if you realize there's like a lot of development to be had, then you can at least start to kind of push yourself to approach this problem, you know?
Mm.
So basically what you need to do is push yourself to do these things that um that like trigger these two issues, you know? Like whatever makes your like mistake mentality, like your fear of making mistakes and like the social pressure, whatever makes that feel bad, you need to like do it as much as possible. And this is why my coaching is kind of excruciating. It's like very challenging.
I felt it the moment you started talking about that. It's like hard to breathe, cause it's so like
Yeah, it's like a very
it's very intense.
yeah.
But I need it though, and
Yeah.
I'm not running from it.
Just know that every player faces problems like these, and the only difference between like the player that actually excels and the player that stagnates is, it's basically going to come down to like how brave you are, how disciplined you are, and having a reason to actually push through these problems is like the thing that's going to make it worth it to be brave. Because, you know, it's not always going to feel like doing like repetition. It's not always going to feel like that's going to actually fix your problem. Usually people want to look for shortcuts. But in the end of the day, like, you're going to have to just practice it over and over and keep IGLing, basically. And it's going to get better.
This is very intense.
Okay. It's kind of later VODs. So another thing, because this is all about, I mean, you can apply this to basically any gameplay. Like if you want to be an IGL, if you want to be whatever role you're gonna play, that mentality, that approach is basically gonna be kind of the same thing. But yeah, we'll say like, do you want to IGL? Like, because there's reasons that I can see why you wouldn't want to be an IGL for when you're playing Bloodhound.
I typically play support,
Okay.
but well, I would want to play support in like I guess my setting, but
Mhm.
like in a comp setting, I want to play support. But I due to like solo queuing and different things of that nature, I'm used to stepping up to the plate to IGL.
That's good.
But I'd rather not.
Yeah, that's good that you're like proactive in that sense. But I will say, IGLing as a support is, it's hard because like the over explaining thing. So that could be a problem. Like there's two reasons you're over explaining. I think some of it is validation, scared of making mistakes, trying to get some comfort. And I think the other half is that you're playing Bloodhound and there's somebody else in front of you and you have to lead them preemptively. You know, it's like you have to plan 3 steps ahead because it's going to take the time it takes to make 2 steps. Like it's going to take the time it takes to make 2 steps. It's going to take that time to communicate them. So you always have to be working 3 steps ahead so that they're like working in real time. You know, if you just said do this, like you're working 1 step at a time from IGLing behind the person who's leading the team, there's gonna be breaks after every single call, right? They're gonna go somewhere, and then you're gonna make a call after you get there.
That's how
And
it was.
yeah, while you're
Like,
making,
I don't know if it's this VOD, but that's literally how it was.
yeah, I mean we can see it in this VOD. I didn't pay attention to the rotations in the other VODs as much, but yeah, so that's like a big reason why you wouldn't want to IGL. I mean, in this case, nobody's IGLing. It's kind of you know, you're stepping up because nobody wants to do it. That's fine. Like you're gonna have to do that sometimes, but ideally, if that's gonna happen a lot in like low level scrims, which I can see as being a thing, it might be worth it to pick up like Octane or Wraith, somebody who can IGL from the front, so you don't have to explain in 3-step chunks. Instead, you can explain whenever it's necessary, 1 step ahead, maybe 2 steps ahead, but a majority of the time you're having your team follow you and it just
Because I have
flows.
Octane.
Yeah. So
Makes sense.
yeah, that's something to think about, and it's gonna have its pros and cons. Obviously, like the fundamental reason you play this game is for fun, and I think the reason anyone should play the game, whether they're at the high level or low level, it should be for fun. Like if you end up at the high level, it should be because that aligns with what you find fun, right? Some people enjoy playing against good players, and if that's the case, then you'll naturally float to the top sort of thing, because you'll expose yourself to that environment. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of went off a little bit, but that's something to think
I
about.
understand that.
The reason, yeah. So basically, don't sacrifice your fun, but yeah, there's gonna be pros and cons to IGLing from different positions.
Just thought about it. Like, say if I was Octane, if I was IGL and there's like a stutter, I could take a pad by myself and be on an island.
Yeah. There's a lot of reactivity you can do. Like any sort of preemptive calming and gameplay is so bad for like to depend on. Like it's gonna exist to some degree, but it's so bad to depend on that because the foundation of Apex is adaptation. It's like going with the flow and adapting and figuring things out. You really cannot plan a lot in this game. What you can do is you can work on things that are present in every situation, like adaptability. Like if you get good at adapting, it's going to be relevant in every single situation. So yeah, preemptive. The more preemptive you have to act, the more it's gonna seriously hinder you. So yeah, ideally it's like you enjoy Octane and you enjoy IGLing. Like that's pretty ideal. Different teams make with different situations. And in the end of the day, you want to maintain as much fun as possible. That's the reason you play. So yeah, just work. You kind of get those factors that you're working with.
Are you recording, by the way?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so I feel like from the first VOD, I didn't really feel like the second VOD was necessary, but there is like a secondary problem. I'd say your primary problem is all this this mistake and social pressure sort of stuff. That's like the biggest problem, the thing that seems to be hindering you the most. But the second VOD kind of showcased another problem, kind of a secondary problem, and like a fundamental sort of efficiency understanding. Like it seems like how you see efficiency can be improved very easily. I'll try to help that by showing some examples. Yeah, so what I'll say is like it's very obvious that you're lacking a goal in the early and the mid game. Like there's a lot of little nuanced things you're doing wrong here in the early and the mid game, and how you spend your time and how you basically the reasons that you end up being inefficient, or the ways that you're inefficient more so, not the reason. So you waste a lot of time in a lot of the things you do, and the reason for that is like you don't have a focus. Like imagine a string. If the end of the like you're grabbing one end of the string, if you grab the other end of the string and you pull it, it's gonna be as long as possible, right? It's gonna be efficient in how much length it can get. But if there's nothing pulling at the string at the end, which is your focus, it's just going to dangle and it's going to waste like length, you know? So that's kind of what's happening with your gameplay, right? I could say, well, you're looting slow, you're cutting corners poorly, it doesn't really look like you're trying to speedrun your gameplay. There's inefficiencies here, the way your pathing is inefficient, yeah, all these reasons, which will, validate the reason behind you having to fix this. But the way you're going to get better at this is, I'll say this, like it's as simple as this. Decide what you want to do, whether you want to be a position team or an edge team, and then copy a team who plays that way. And the time is like the most important thing. If you limit yourself to 145 rotation, let's say you want to play positioning, and you notice that a team that lands in your spot and plays for positioning always rotates 145. They're like a tier 1 team, like definitely a good team to study. You're gonna be setting this deadline basically, right? If you're supposed to leave 145, what do you think you're gonna do in the moment when you feel yourself doing something slow? It's gonna hurt, right? Like it's gonna feel uncomfortable. You're gonna feel like you have to go faster, and you have to look. You're constantly gonna be adapting in the moment, right? So, what is your goal when you're looting? Like currently, as of these VODs.
I don't. Currently, I'm just really just trying to look for a decent, basically just a decent weapon, and if I can,
Okay.
just get an armor along the way.
All right. So the problem basically lies in your priorities. So prioritization is a better way than saying like you need a goal, because yeah, you have a goal. It's like get good weapon, but
Not really.
like the problem of you not having a goal isn't actually the problem. The problem is that you're not prioritizing things. So, and that's like, yeah, that's normal because you don't really know what to prioritize without experience. So prioritization is the reason behind efficiency, basically. Like why would you speedrun a game if it's easier to play it normally? It's because you're prioritizing time, you know? Like there's nothing wrong with whatever you're doing, it's just prioritization. So edge team is gonna play completely different than a positioning team. Edge team is gonna, you know, kind of try to cover as much distance as possible and increase the chance that they're going to find an opportunity.
I want to play positioning.
You want to play positioning? Okay. So yeah, that's how an edge team would play, because they're prioritizing like KP. They're prioritizing opportunity. Rotation teams are more so, I mean, everyone optimizes their opportunity in BR because you don't know what's going to happen. So you want to play for an option that's going to cover 3 possibilities. Like let's say this circle is going to go here 50% of the time and here 50% of the time. This would be a great place to play if you're a positioning team, because positioning teams they're a mixture of gambling, because once they get in their spot, they're hoping that they're gonna have to move the least amount. So it's a gamble on top of speed running to get like a good spot to optimize the chance of their gamble. So if you're a rotation team and you rotate late, teams are going to cover the spot that has 8 options, right? All the way to the point where you're going to be left with a spot with 1 option. It's going to be like a spot that somebody else controls, but you're just going to sit there for like a limited time before you die inevitably, or fight like a 90-10 fight like in favor of the enemy team. So it's basically just gambling, positioning, and
Wait,
and
so
speedrunning.
it sounds like Edge is better then. But the only thing about Edge I think of is what happens late game. I guess you just have to find a spot when you get there.
So it's hard to explain every detail of Edge. But you can think about it this way, like as the zone pushes people in, people are inevitably gonna fight. So you're kind of approaching it with this a similar idea, to where you'll be in a spot that is like pretty good, and then it will basically be a given. It's almost guaranteed that when you have to move in, if your spot isn't bad, somebody else is going to be rotating from a worse spot, or they're going to have less options when they do have to rotate in from edge. And that's going to create an opportunity for you, because that's going to force them to challenge a team.
I
So
kinda like Edge then. It's kind of like, to me, at least how I'm interpreting it, it sounds like you're kind of like a puppet master, and you get to like pull the
yeah,
strings and manipulate teams. You can make
yeah,
teams fight.
I think edge is generally much more fun in my opinion. But I think bottom line is you need to experiment a lot. And I think people have kind of a fundamental misunderstanding of positioning, because I played back in Watson meta. That's when I played comp the most, and that's when everyone played positioning. And then my team kind of was part of the emergence of fighting teams and edge teams, and teams that are going to abuse teams that suck at fighting. So what we did is, we ran a comp that is objectively better at fighting than Watson comp. I ran Bloodhound. And what that does is it makes it so it's easier to fight. There is a chance that you're going to get 3P'd. Like basically it's like it goes from like 50-50 fight to 60-40 in your advantage. And but the downside is you're dependent on taking this risk, which is a highly skill dependent risk. So in that sense that it's more skill dependent than positioning, when it comes down to mechanics and fundamentals of Apex, like adaptation and on the fly thinking, in that sense it's like there's a higher skill ceiling. But the drawback is that you have to take these risks and you're going to depend less on luck. So you can do a lot less if you're bad, but you can do a lot more if you're good. So basically the drawback is you had to be good. And
For edge.
yeah, for fighting based teams, which is edge. Edge teams have to take fights. They have to look for opportunities. And what people don't understand about this game right now, at least a lot of people don't understand this, is that they think edge is more gambly because you're forced to fight more. Like you end up fighting more and taking these chances more. But it is more dependent on your skill than your luck. So positioning teams, they're basically facing like I forgot how I'm gonna explain this. So basically positioning teams can't really optimize their luck as much as an edge team can, because edge teams can come down more to skill. It's a lower skill floor but a higher skill ceiling. Positioning is kind of more in the middle. If everyone is in a house hiding and there's 5 teams that are really good at fighting, it's a 5 in 15 chance that you're going to be the team that gets pushed when 15 other teams are up, right? Or when 14 other teams are up, right? So there's a high chance that they're just not going to target you. But if they do target you, you're kind of going to get owned, like you're fighting a lost battle. There's a lot of ways you can. It's really not fun.
I get it because like you can secure positioning.
Yeah.
If you guys can really lock it down, you can just like farm people, but at the same time, like I understand it's comp and it's especially when it's money on the line, but man, what's the point? And if someone targets you, there's a good chance one you're gonna get rolled, and you're not gonna get any better just holding a spot.
Yeah. So bringing it back to like the fundament, like the my coaching style, it's like you get less exposure as a positioning team. You're just gonna be playing the game less. There's gonna be so much time where you're literally like AFK in a building, and people aren't gonna. You're like not even gonna need to hold your spot that actively. Like there will be times. Yeah, there will be times where you have to actively hold your spot, but it's like, yeah, you're just gonna be AFK so much. So you're gonna get better less. Basically, it's just less challenging. And yeah, a lot of people don't value the challenge. And people who play comp, it like really preys on their insecurities, and then you want to do something that feels secure. It's kind of affects everyone in that way. So playing edge is like it's more it's just more challenging, but there's a lot to it. It's really compelling, like challenging, but there's a lot of reasons to do it.
Still sounds funner though.
It's much more fun in my opinion.
And I feel like you get better
Yeah. So yeah, you can
Um,
just look at teams that play edge versus positioning, and like it will be very easy for you to tell like if you're falling asleep during the VOD, you're gonna fall asleep during your game. You know?
so I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have any like do you have any examples of teams who play like edge versus positioning?
Yeah. So TSM is the most, you know, the most famous positioning team. I think they're a bit different now. They're a bit more like versatile. Before they really were just hard positioning, especially Watson meta. A good edge team, I would say probably C9. I haven't watched them since they dropped Noct. I don't know if that changed their playstyle, but they were very edge and like a very good team. So I would say I'll include this down here. I would say watch C9 VODs, TSM VODs, and then you get the two perspectives. Also like I don't know, like I've been watching so many different people. I'm not sure if like Sentinels is still playing hard edge. Like I would recommend Sentinels for a hard edge team, but they might be playing different now. So yeah, I would say C9 TSM. I would say watch as many different teams as you can. Like naturally you're just gonna get bored of watching the same team, so it's gonna kinda, as long as you don't pressure yourself to like watch C9 and TSM, just branch out. Look at Liquipedia, like top 5 teams, NA, EU. Watch them. Watch NA, watch EU. You'll get to see the difference in regions. You'll get to see difference in edge versus positioning, all this stuff. So yeah, I'll just point out a few things. So like your dive was bad. I could point out why your dive was bad. Your dive is just gonna get better when you start prioritizing things, like your rotation timer.
You mean a dive as in like just a dive itself or the
Like
actual spot we landed?
when you're dropping, there are many ways that you can drop optimally. So you can solo drop because everyone has to drop at different moments. Like objectively, there is a best moment to drop to hit the ground and contest a certain part of the map, you know, to win the 50-50. There's a best way to do that. And if you really want to get closer and closer to this hypothetical optimal timing, you will solo drop, and then everyone drops at that perfect moment depending on where they land, and they're just gonna go in a perfectly straight line. Like you're just gonna look at it, you're gonna press E, you're not gonna move your mouse, you're gonna look around, see where the enemy's landing, maybe react if the enemy's doing something that you can react to. Like if they're triple landing on you, obviously you just want to swerve off. They're going to be all 3 in one spot. That's a bad looting situation for you. They just got baited. It's like there's all these ways to optimize your drop, and it basically comes down to how fast you drop and how much information you get and how you react to it. So the first one's pretty easy. The second two are like, you know, they're gonna expand a lot as you play. But the only reason you'd ever get good at that is if you're trying to speedrun the looting phase because you're prioritizing rotation time, or trying to prioritize the time in which you can start looking for opportunities, start looking for 3Ps and fights. There's so many things to prioritize that will, you know, pull the string, as I talked about before. So Yeah, so basically you'll go from like looking for your optimal loadout to going with the optimal approach to your gameplay and trying to get to that point as fast as possible with the best loot that RNG will give you. And there's no right way to do this. It's just you need to have something great to prioritize. So some teams will really maximize their loot before they look for opportunities. Some teams will work off of tempo really well. You know, they'll land, they'll loot minimally, and then they'll try to abuse the fact that maybe Skyhook is still looting, and you can expect them to be very split. Like one person will be over here on the west side, one person will be here on the south side, one person will be on the north side. If you ball formation after looting in the most dense space possible, so you avoid like auxiliary stuff over here that is less efficient to loot, but you'll get a lot less loot, you can, you know, work on your goal, whatever you're prioritizing. It will make everything over here make sense, whatever it is. Some teams will land over here, like one person here, one person here, one person like all the way up here, and they will just loot as much as possible. And, you know, whatever they're doing, it reflects whatever they're prioritizing. So the whole point is efficiency is like relative to what you're prioritizing. And if you're not prioritizing anything, efficiency is just not going to be possible.
Mhm.
And, you know, like if you're just prioritizing something, basically the more impactful thing you prioritize, the more it means to be efficient. And like the more that skill ceiling starts to show of efficiency.
So I guess to capitalize or to see if I understand it, I need to have a plan more than just like, okay, where I want to go, because depending on like what I decide is gonna be my playstyle, whether it's edge or zone.
Yeah. And you
Need
can
to, like-
also work backwards. It's harder and it's reactive and it's more adaptive, and most teams like to have a set play style and set approach, and like, you know, like I used to be like that. I used to MS paint my my loot route to like theorize, you know, back when I was like a TSM playstyle team, heavily positioning. I tried to save every half a second possible, because it all comes down to maybe 2 seconds where one person's wraith gets to a spot before the other, and then boom, they have the high ground, and the other person's just at a disadvantage. They're just gonna fold it. Yeah, so you can do that, but you can do a combination of like, let's say you're a team that typically likes to full loot an area and really maximize their loot for whatever reason. Let's say all three of you land and get a purple within 2 seconds, and you're in close proximity with another position. So let's say you're playing epicenter. Let me wait for the map. So let's say you're an epicenter team. This is like a very practical scenario. So epicenter, let's say 2 of you get a purple, 1 person gets a blue, or 2 blues, 1 purple, and like good guns. Maybe like only 1 long range gun. So like your team fight's definitely good. It's very good. And relative to the other 19 teams in the game, you got God RNG within the first 5 seconds, right? Within the first 5 seconds, you undoubtedly have the best loot in the game. Now, with that understanding, that fundamental understanding, which comes from playing the game in a very broad and experimental way, where you start to understand the value of every little bit of it, even though you have less of a strong leg that you can really depend on, you can make these adaptations and understand your momentum, your tempo that you have. Basically, the hierarchy in which your team is at relative to every other team in the game, and you can abuse that and you can react off of it rather than just playing your stagnant, complacent playstyle that you're used to, that you're comfortable doing, that is more predictable because you have more experience doing it. You're going to be able to react because you just understand the game on a deeper level. So yeah, this happens. You land epi, maybe 1 person lands survey, because you know that's what complexity does, and there's good reason that people like give up this whole POI, and like you get this good tempo and you just act off of it. So it's a combination of both. Basically, yeah. What I would say for you is your main goal is going to be working on prioritization. That's going to literally make you start speedrunning the game 100 times better than you did before. It's just gonna start developing really easily because everything is gonna start to mean something. Like the time it takes for you to loot that flatline and swap the P20 and drop shit and like path better, and like the route you take when you're looting, it's all gonna be affecting whatever you're prioritizing. So that's your main goal, but understand that you don't want to be rigid. You don't want to be stagnant. You want to be open-minded, and you want to be willing to experiment. And if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. But you're going to learn so much that way.
I guess when you do it like that, there really is no room for like social like pressure.
Yeah, because you really start to see like the weight of the situation. Like there's so much opportunity here, there's so much we can do, and like there's so much longevity to it. Like you're just going to keep learning and learning. It's just when you look at the social pressure at that point, it's like, well, it's not that big of a deal. Like even if it's present and you haven't managed to reduce it, it's not going to be as big of a deal.
Because you actually have a goal, you have some sort of aim, other
Yeah.
than kind of like free roaming. Like after this, of course, it's gonna take a minute for me for like this to cultivate and for me to put everything into effect.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanna try to at least take something that's major from this session, and I wanna try to immediately like apply it like when I finished. Cause that's my thing. I like to
Yeah, it's good.
learn something and then try to quickly apply it so that it sticks.
Yeah, make use of the short-term memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I already went so deep into this, but so it feels kind of unnecessary to go through all the examples, but like yeah, this is an example. Like this phase of the game, you guys are looting very slow. Like it's very clear that there's nothing pushing you. There's no reason for looting slow to be like bad in your mind in this moment, because it doesn't relate to whatever you're prioritizing, because you're not prioritizing something. So like I can give you things to prioritize, but more so the thing is like you gotta think about that. Like that's a skill. You gotta be able to be creative and come up with new ideas. So for example, there's very specific things that become like a great idea that aren't relevant to any other team. And the same thing applies to you. There's going to be a lot of things, whatever moment, whatever your game you're in, like the thing I talked about earlier where you get lucky loot early, and also just dependent on your preferences, your team synergy, your overall playstyle. All these things are going to affect so much. Dude, I literally just got so lost.
There's a lot of things that's gonna affect the current situation.
I have no idea the reason why I was saying that, but oh yeah, so I can give you things to prioritize, but building the skill of prioritizing things either on the fly or just dependent on things that are a bit, less on the fly, like team synergy, that's a skill in itself. So I'll give an example. Did you play Kings Canyon at all? Like,
Yeah.
so my team would land containment, right? It's like southeast of slums, and slums.
There's a place across the way from containment. It's like because everyone used to call me Hikari, like because that was my previous username. So they used to call it Hikari's hideout. It was like
Oh yeah.
it's across the way from containment. It's like you have the
It's on the
house.
hill, right?
Yeah, it's on the hill,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's not the house on the hill, but it's down low. It's like you have
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
house up there, the building, and then you have the building right below it. So
I
we used to
see.
loot there, then push containment teams.
You used to be able to shoot the feet down there, and they would lift up and give you good loot. But anyways, so yeah, what we would do is, this is very unique and like very good adaptation by my teammate. We would go containment, and then the way slums works is slums is spread out. People loot there for a little bit longer. Containment is dense. You know, by the time we loot containment and we rotate over there, they're usually going to be just starting to rotate. But what we can do is we can just go slums before they finish, ideally before they're like rotated out. We climb on the buildings, we just run over them, and then they're stuck underneath us and they can't rotate, and we have high ground. We have every advantage in the game at that point. So it's like all these little things that you're gonna end up prioritizing are gonna be pretty unique, and it's gonna be a skill you build in yourself. So don't get too caught up in like, oh, I don't know what to prioritize, I don't know if this is good, and like doubting yourself. Just experiment and try stuff and like have fun doing it, because that's the whole point. Like, worst case scenario, let's say in a weird delusional world, you don't even learn from the mistake. Worst case scenario, you can at least enjoy it. Like, it's not something to worry about. So yeah, experiment a lot, and that's gonna really help you build your prioritization and the way you think about the game.
It sounds so simple, but at the same time so hard to grasp in a moment.
Yeah, so I mean, you're gonna like wonder how you actually shift this, like how you actually start thinking this way. But
It's literally what I'm doing right now. It's
yeah,
so
it's gonna be stuff you think in depth about outside the game, and like whatever you think about in the game, it is how it is. Let yourself play honestly. This is something I tell every student down here. So yeah, the way you're gonna work on your goal, all this stuff, you know, we try to simplify it as much as possible, but there's a lot of time you can spend thinking about it and like changing how you understand these things. And I will say, you don't want to do it in game. That's going to become a bigger problem than any problem you're working on. Like, if you're thinking in game, if you're actively trying to work on a goal in game, actively working on a goal in game while you're playing is a bigger problem than whatever reason is for that goal.
I
Like
do that a lot.
that will ruin everything, and it ruins so many players. That is one of the biggest problems in like gaming. Is just people think too much, and you know, there's a lot of reasons people think too much, and sometimes I do whole sessions on just people thinking too much, and that's like, it's just so big, so it can be so much of a problem. And it just comes down to them like not really trusting themselves, not trusting themselves to get better, not trusting their feeling. Like, the way you're gonna get good at this and the way you're gonna start to really grasp this is you're gonna work on it outside the game when you're free to think about it, and like you can actually focus on it and start to simplify things in your brain to where you actually start to understand it as a feeling rather than a new concept.
How would you, if you don't work on it? Because I usually work on it in game, and I definitely agree with like how that affects you. But how, if you don't work on it in game, then how does it ever change?
So this comes down to trust and like how we learn. And I'm not sure which example I should use. I'll use VOD watching. So sometimes the time you surprise yourself the most, the time you make the most improvement, is when you don't expect it, right? Like, you don't care about whatever you just implemented, but it blew your mind. Like, you just did some shit you saw that you had no intention of actually implementing. Like, you didn't even realize that you watched it, and then you start maybe moving how Ras moves in that creative, amazing dodge that he has, where he's like doing these insane things. Like, Ras is a very good movement player, and he does very creative things with his movement in like a dodging sense. Like, yeah, so for example, if you watch a lot of Ras, and you have no intention of playing like him, you literally watch him for fun, you will find yourself like playing like him in certain ways that your brain just subconsciously adopted. So no matter how little you care about something and how little your intent is to actually absorb that information and apply it, it's like automatic. You can't help it. Your brain is insane. It's OP. Think about a
So
baby. So babies couldn't give a fuck about walking. They have no pressure to walk. Like they don't have a reason to walk. They don't have a reason to talk. They don't have a reason to do like a lot of stuff that is like greater than a instinctual sort of drive, you know? They like learn all these abstract things that don't really have to do with their like, I don't know, like their survival. I mean, I guess it has to do with their survival, but like
they
when
don't
you're
really care about it.
yeah, they don't
But
care. They're not
but
they're not thinking about it. But the way they learn is like watching others, you know? If you watch something that has grown up around a certain type of animal, they will behave like that animal. But nobody taught that thing that it should do that. It just, that's how brains learn. They just see and they do. And that's like basically it. There's not like an in between thing where you have to like convince yourself to do things or give yourself reasons to do things. So it really just comes down to watching and playing. It doesn't really have to do with like your intent that much. Although your intent can can influence what you watch and what you play. So if it's as simple as like what you watch and what you play, and it doesn't have like you don't have to consciously work on it and think about it in game, then people will wonder like, well, how do I optimize that? And then why are certain people worse? And I
that's
think
my question. I literally just asked that in Max chat yesterday.
yeah, so what it comes down to is your like your environment. Like this thing I introduced. Experience and exposure. So basically quantity and quality. That's it. Like you want to play at the highest level, highest difficulty, and you want to watch at the highest difficulty and the highest complexity. You want to just maximize the complexity of things that you watch and what you do. And you want to maximize how much you do it. And then your brain, this like learning that is all subconscious, it just works basically. It will surprise you. You don't have to consciously work on it in game. You can like rest assured that you don't need to feel pressure to do it in game. Now like people are still going to do things naturally in game. Like some people will overthink a lot, but as long as you're not actually pressuring and you don't have the impression that that's how you get better, then it's like you're destroying a monster spawner or something, and then eventually all those
But I
monsters are
thought
they're gonna start dying out, you know? So if we get rid of the cause and the fundamental thing pressuring you to think that way, which we can do by learning about how learning works, I guess. Like it's just a very simple thing, just difficulty and exposure, environments. Then like you're not really gonna feel that pressure as much anymore. Like we can get rid of that pressure, and then whatever bad habits you have, you don't need to like stress about it in the moment when you're doing it. It's just gonna taper off on its own, and you can just let it do that. So I guess that goes back to you wondering how you're gonna actually like make these changes if you're not thinking about it in game. You're just gonna flood it basically. You're gonna like flood your brain with stuff, and it's gonna use it whether you like it or not. It's gonna learn.
so it's not something that you have to force then.
Yeah.
I think maybe that was something about me because I felt like I had to force a lot of things for it to work out.
Yeah, yeah. It's not really like a forceful thing. It's more so Like, I think the three main factors are experience, exposure, and fun. Because like once you have this idea of experience and exposure and how it's not like a conscious thing, it's more dependent on your environment and letting your brain adapt. Then all that's left is to have fun, because now you're free and you aren't distracted from overthinking things and all this bullshit. Like, you can actually enjoy the game. You know, rest assured that you don't have to do all this extra work in your head that distracts you from having fun. That before you may have thought that's part of learning, whereas it's not actually part of learning. It's
I did. I 100% did. Wait, if that's the case, then how do you get out of places that you're already at? Because like I like season 8, I got to D1, and that was the second time I hit D1 solo.
that's kind of a different problem, because like with my style of coaching, I'm gonna like broaden your gameplay. I'm gonna make it so you stand on the leg that hurts. That's not gonna make you increase RP in the short term. It's gonna make it so at some point it's gonna be impossible to not gain RP. But that point is gonna be farther away than it would be to like play to your comfort and really maximize RP. Because maximizing RP and rank is not actually Apex Legends. Apex Legends is competitive gameplay. It's scrims and all that, and it's like that's a good point system for skill. Whereas if you're going to like basically the way you get out of wherever you are currently is so what you can do is you can do this short-term RP gain playstyle where you really maximize RP and minimize the difficulty and challenge. You're not going to learn at all, but if it brings you up a tier and increases your experience quality, then it's worth it. But you don't want to do it when it's like something you have to really strain for and something you're gonna struggle for until the end of the season, because then you have no time to even take advantage of it. You want to do it at these points where you feel like, okay, I'm ready to prioritize RP and move up in rank so that I can play against better players. And then you do that. Should take like a week, and then you can go back to playing broad and having fun and learning, rather than sitting in chokes waiting for people and playing in the most safe, boring way possible to optimize RP. But the general way of how you get out of where you are, because I can see how you can have the impression of, if your skill depends on your environment, how will you ever surpass your environment?
Exactly.
So the way you do that is it's not only experience quality, it's also exposure. So that's half of the equation. It's huge. So you're competing. Not everyone in your elo, in your current skill level, although they're in the same environment, they're not going to have the same exposure as you. If you maximize that exposure, you are going to surpass them. And on top of this is just the playing aspect. The watching aspect is a whole nother part. That's how you can cheat experience, basically. And you can maximize your exposure to input, what you consume in terms of like watching other people play. You can maximize the exposure of that. But that's how you actually artificially, expose your brain to higher quality experience. Does that make sense? So basically your question was, how do you surpass your environment if your skill is dependent on your environment? Well, your skill is dependent on your environment and the exposure to your environment. So the quality of your environment and the quantity of your exposure. So you forgot about the quantity of your exposure. And then as well as that, you can watch VODs, and that's a whole nother world. So there's a lot you can do to surpass your environment. And another bit, like, does that make sense to you?
Experience plus exposure.
Yeah. because you
More
were
experience, exposure, and fun.
yeah. So you were talking about how do I surpass my experience, basically, my environment. How do I surpass that? But it's not only environment; it's also exposure. But so that leads to another large factor of skill is that people only look at the environment, like the experience. Well, they look at the experience quality when they're judging skill, and I forgot how I was gonna explain this. So your skill level is basically experience quality. Like experience quality is your skill level, enemy skill level, overall complexity. And when people look at your skill, they're only looking at a static like a static segment, like a snapshot of your skill, which is your experience. But in reality, your skill, you should look at it as the equation, as your improvement rate. Like you can be a bad player, but your improvement rate can be higher, and people will equate you as a player in the same environment as someone the same skill level as you. They will look at you guys equal, even though you have a higher improvement rate. So that's another thing for you to consider, because a lot of people get caught up in their skill level. They get very demotivated, but it's very liberating, and it gives you a lot of, it's very empowering, really, more so than liberating, but it's empowering to look at your improvement rate as well as your skill rather than just your skill. So yeah, basically,
I feel like I can improve a lot. I typically improve a lot compared to people who's around me. Being because I didn't realize that. Well, I didn't look at it like this, but I constantly like say if I have someone in, let's say, even though rank doesn't matter much, but say my elo, right, diamond, I'll be in a group of diamond players, but I'll watch like high tier, I guess, content, just watch it, and then I go like scrim, or I'd like 1v1 someone who's really good.
yeah.
And I'll do that consistently. Or just because my friend hosts private lobbies and we just play around and
Mhm.
everyone's there is good.
Yeah.
Like X Masters, Preds, and we just play that.
Yeah, so it seems like
And I
that's
do
like
better.
something you enjoy, right? Just naturally.
Yeah, it is. It's really fun.
Yeah, see? So that's something you can understand, like, so you don't have to get caught up in your static like snapshot of your skill, you know? You can see the whole equation. The way you approach the game is a very you know, like growth. It's conducive to growth, basically, and it's good to understand that.
So you're gonna get better naturally as long as you make sure that you're exposing yourself to like better players or like high tier players
Yeah.
and exposing yourself to high tier content.
Yeah. So complexity and quality is really like the most simple way to think about it.
Okay.
So kind of what I'm writing right now. So complexity and quantity, sorry. So yeah, like, you know, you can look at it as like there are some players who play pubs. You know, they play against the worst of the worst of the worst, right? And they can still manage to start to get decent, you know, because they're playing a lot. And naturally, playing pubs is less taxing, so this is kind of like a common pattern. People who play pubs, they'll play a lot longer. People who play scrims will get so fucking tired from playing scrims because it's so challenging. Like, you feel exhausted when you're done with scrims.
Mhm.
And, you know, so people with better experience quality, you know, it's going to kind of balance out a little bit, even though I think like your environment, like the complexity of your environment is the most important thing. even though it will be a little bit more tiring, like you can still play ranked for like 8 hours and it's not that bad. Because you know, like if you're playing pubs, like sometimes there's not enough time to tire you out. It's like weightlifting, like it's just intensity and volume, and so you want to be able to get that optimal balance for the equation. So if
I guess that goes with experimenting.
yeah, because being willing to experiment, you know, it's gonna make it so you're more willing to play with and against better players if you're down to experiment, and it's also going to broaden your gameplay and like create less downtime because you're going to be more opportunistic, so that's going to increase your exposure. So yeah, experimentation, I guess experimentation, I want to kind of like relate it to broadening gameplay. That's really what it is. If you broaden your gameplay, there's gonna be less downtime. Yeah, so how you're gonna go about your goal, I already went over that. You go over it outside the game, don't worry about it in the game. And one thing that will like give you kind of like a green light to really not pressure yourself in game when you find yourself going against your goals, like you're gonna start like, I'm doing it again. You're gonna start thinking about it. It's gonna possibly spiral, but like just accept it. Like you want to be as honest as possible and see how you play with that, like in an honest way, you know, in the most pure, honest, unaffected way. You want to see yourself not like progress, you know, in a pure way. Like if you say, oh, I'm focusing on this a lot better, but you're kind of artificially allocating focus to do that, then it's like it's questionable. But yeah, basically just don't worry about thinking about your goals while you're in game. Think about it outside the game. Let yourself do your thing, however bad it is, however much it goes against your goals. Let yourself do it while you're playing. It's fine. And then watching versus playing, I'd say 35-65 is like a good ratio, like around that, and you're already there, so that's good. The ratio of which you play ranked or scrims, like I would say like typically I tell people play ranked 95% of your play time. If you're scrimming, then like basically my whole point is maximize your experience quality, maximize the complexity of how you play.
So I should be scrimming or playing rank most of the time.
Yeah, so always take the best challenge available to you that you're like down to play, you know. So yeah, tournaments better than ranks, better than pubs. Just prioritize really. Who to watch, I would say, like I said, C9, TSM, these are good two like opposite teams. Trying to think of like a good edge team. I think you should also watch Gambit, but
Gambit
hard
Esports,
IQ POV.
You?
Yeah. So watch these guys' Twitch VODs. Since you're a scrimmer, definitely prioritize their tournament VODs. The same thing. I'll just put it up here. And like branch out, watch as many people as you like, find people you like watching. Don't get hung up on watching certain people. Watch whoever you want, as long as they're like top 10 on a team. Then like you're really not gonna go wrong. NAEU, even like top 1, top 2 teams, like Asian teams, good to watch. As long as they're a top team, it's good, especially NAEU. How you're gonna watch kind of reflects the same thing as before. You don't need to consciously analyze things. I'm forgetting how to talk. I've been talking so long. Yes. Yeah, so you don't need to consciously analyze things. It's the same ideology, same approach. Just go about it naturally, have fun. Maximize the complexity of what you're watching, maximize the exposure, the quantity of what you're watching, and enjoy it. Nothing else matters. Just as long as those are the only things, that you know matter. Whatever else happens is fine. If you do analyze naturally, it's fine as long as nothing is pressuring you to analyze. You want to be doing things that you just is natural, what you're enjoying.
I've actually seen this. Like what you were talking about, like just watching and how that helps. Because my brother, he plays football, like American football, and like he's
Oh,
been
yeah.
in a newspaper and everything since he was like a kid. And he just watches. He doesn't like try to break down the videos when he watches
Mhm.
like montages. He just watches it. And then he goes out and he goes to, and I don't even think he notices like what's going on. But he just watches the games and then he goes and he plays. And
Mhm.
then he gets highlights.
Yeah. That's cool that you have that example. That's insane actually. So cool.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just like
And he
it's
doesn't pressure himself to watch it. He just watches it
yeah, it's just
and
cuz you
just
enjoy it.
for fun. Hmm.
Yeah, like when I coach people, some people they're pressured so much to get good, but like not everyone should be trying to get good if they don't enjoy it. Like if you enjoy the watching and the challenge, that's great. You're going to get good. But bottom line, like play for fun, do what you enjoy. And yeah, that's a good example. You guys are both good examples from what I've heard so far. It's cool. Um
I do sometimes feel pressured. I only
yeah.
feel pressure because I felt like it was a conscious thing. I felt like I had to consciously do all of these things to get
Yeah.
good. Like I do like when I did my first scrum, I was so excited afterwards. It was so
Mhm.
fun.
Yeah, it like makes like it's like what I was talking about before with prioritization. Once you have something to prioritize, every little thing that impacts what you're prioritizing gains so much meaning, and it becomes fun to loot. You're gonna start speed running your loot because it affects things that happen later down the line in the game. It affects how what your opportunity you're gonna get, what position you're gonna get. It's like once you scrim, playing pubs is 10 times more fun. Playing ranked is 10 times more fun because you know it's gonna feed into your scrim experience, which is like so fun.
Hmm.
So yeah, um forgot I was gonna say something about this section, but I think it's good. um oh yeah, when you said like he doesn't really analyze it, it just seems like he might not even know what he's doing. Like it just kind of is like such a natural thing. Like that's kind of the sensation that like you'll start to notice. Like um, did I write it down here? Yeah, it's like your spec in an MMO. Like you'll really notice it has like a note. It like takes it like adds a certain twist to your gameplay. So let's say you watch, you know, someone with creative movement. Like their movement is unique and their pacing is unique. They have like these little unique nuances. If you watch them a lot, those things are going to start sinking into your gameplay, whether you think about it or not, or whether you realize it or not. And then it's gonna start to like manifest to a degree to where it kind of surprises you. You're like, whoa, like I wasn't even thinking about that, but I'm starting to do it. It's kind of cool.
I noticed that. I think it was either in rank or it was either a rank video I watched, a scrim or a tourney from like a pro team, and they did something. I think it was I watched Hal do something,
Hmm.
and then I found myself doing it like the exact same setting. I was like, oh wait, what? It was pretty insane to
Yeah,
like watch myself do what I just did.
yeah, it's
It's like I
crazy.
didn't practice this at all. I literally just watched it and I completely replicated it.
Yeah, and it gives you a lot of like trust in yourself to like actually start learning these things, and like it makes you realize like as long as you have a human brain, like everyone has this potential. You know, you just have to learn how to enable it. And some people are lucky enough that they kind of like go with the flow at the beginning, and but like yeah, as long as you have a human brain, that dude, that thing is insane. Human brain is OP. But do you have any questions? Because I think that's about it. I will like organize this and then I'll send it to you, and I'll also upload the recording. But
I appreciate it a ton, man. I mean, at least not now. I just kind of wanna. I think I'm gonna relax because I feel like if I
yeah,
try to do it now, I'm gonna try to like analyze some things. I'm just gonna relax, like let it set, go like. eat something, drink something, and then I'll just hop on.
Yeah, you don't want to worry about it too much because it's like a very long term, drawn out thing, you know, and it's like you're getting hit by this wave of information, and after
That's
that
what I'm
wave
gonna
of
let it process.
yeah, after that wave of information hits you, like it's just gonna be like a trickle over time. Just gonna work on this thing.
How often do you coach?
Um, lately, not that often. When I first started, I was coaching like maybe once or twice a month, not very often.
Okay. Alright, I think I'll definitely, of course, like I don't know what your schedule is, and I still like I don't want to spam. I don't want to spam coach. 'Cause I feel like if I do that, it's
Yeah,
not gonna like.
yeah.
You know,
I
I need to
generally
give myself time to learn.
yeah, I generally recommend like long periods in between coaching sessions, especially since my coaching style is not like an injection. It's like a you know, it's not like I'm giving you like a flat boost. I'm like boosting your rates basically, sort of thing. So you need to start to like give time for that rate to even show. So yeah. But yeah, I would say at the very minimum, like in between sessions. Before I would say 2 weeks, but
It's probably gonna take a minute to be
I
honest.
would say like three
It's gonna.
weeks at the very minimum, and that's like the very minimum if you really wanted another session early. Yeah, just don't worry about it. If you have any questions, just DM me. Like, any student is just free to DM me as much as they want, because you know, like this coaching is very challenging, and you're gonna start to run into things that are difficult, like new problems, basically, or just like not even new problems, but just the stress of it is gonna be something that people want to talk about at you know the very most common example. But
Alright, thanks. Thank you.
yeah, I will try to organize this into your main goals, and then the recording, of course, something you can go over occasionally. But yeah, that'll be it.
So where do I go to pay you?
Just PayPal. I'll send you the link
Alright.
after this.
How much do I send you?
25 for one session.
Alright. Well, again, thank you. And if
Yep.
I have anything or come across anything, I'll be sure to let you know.
Yeah. Feel free to DM. Any questions are welcome. Peace.
Peace.
All right.